Dr. Antonia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Antonia Wilcoxon, consultant with Equity Strategies and your facilitator. Thank you for being here tonight. This is the sixth and the final in a series of Minneapolis African American community engagement, a citywide community engagement for a Minneapolis African American historic and cultural context study. The city of Minneapolis hired a consultant team comprised of Lane Johnson Development, Equity Strategies, LLC, and 106 Group to conduct citywide community outreach on the needs and wants of the African American community relative to heritage preservation. I'd like to ask Mr. Robert Skalecki, a city planner with the city of Minneapolis in historic preservation, if he could speak a bit about this project.
Thank you, Dr. Antonia. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Skalecki, city planner in the historic preservation section of the planning department with the city of Minneapolis. As Dr. Antonia mentioned, this is a project that has been ongoing for the past year or so, funded by the National Trust for Historic Preservation African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund grant. And this is actually our sixth and final community meeting for this project. So it's very exciting to see all you here, and I'm very happy to be here with you all tonight. One thing I will add too is that the project has a webpage that I'll shortly put in the chat, as well as any contact info for me if you want to reach out and ask any questions about the project. So
thank you. We are a joint group of 3 organizations coming together, and I'd like to invite Judge LaJune Lang, which is the lead organization, Lang Johnson Development, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilcoxon, and good evening, everyone. We are continuing on our journey to collect information about building, places, and people regarding the story of the African American community in Minneapolis. We've looked at Fort Snelling, we've looked at the village of St. Anthony, we're looking at early Minneapolis with St. James AME Church, founded in 1960. We've traveled through music, capturing the Minneapolis sound from South Minneapolis and North Minneapolis. And tonight we're looking forward to talking about art and culture. Too often African descendant people have been placed out of context without any attributions for art and culture. And these experts tonight will give us information about themselves, their work, and their interest in art and culture.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Erin Kay is the Senior Architectural Historian for the 106 Group, here to introduce herself and say a few words.
Thank you, Antonia, and thank you all for being here with us for this final session. As Antonia said, my role on this project is to provide heritage preservation support as we document and record the stories and information shared throughout these sessions. So heritage preservation or historic preservation is about documenting, conserving, and protecting places that are important to our history. And there are several ways that we can do that: through listing properties on the National Register of Historic Places, designating them as local landmarks, telling stories through exhibits, which will certainly be relevant to our panelists this evening. And we also welcome your ideas about how we might protect this history for the future. It is important to acknowledge that the National Register of Historic Places and the list of local landmarks in Minneapolis overwhelmingly focus on the contributions of white individuals and events associated with white history. And that is not representative of Minneapolis's history. Additionally, we recognize that many important places to African Americans in Minneapolis have been lost or erased due to intentional arson, construction interstates, urban renewal initiatives, among other factors, which are further obstacles to being able to protect and preserve these places. We also know that many places and stories have been excluded from that narrative, sometimes due to the restrictions of the current criteria. So as we go through these sessions, we've been collecting information and we hope to significantly expand the narrative. And we'll also provide the city with a list and a map of places that are associated with African-American contributions and events in history. We'll share your input about how you'd like African-American heritage to be preserved. And then we'll also be drafting an outline for a historic context study, which will lay the framework for the future preservation of many of these places. So throughout this event, we're excited to hear what our panelists have to share, as well as any of our attendees. And in the website that Rob mentioned, there's also a place for you to provide input tonight or in the future about any places that you feel are worthy of preservation. So thank you all for being here with us.
Thank you, Mary. Our thanks to our producers of this evening event, Ms. Emery Carter, who orchestrates the music we hear and the informative slides we'll see throughout our meeting tonight. Thank you, Emery. Thank you all. It is my pleasure to introduce you to tonight's panelists for the theme, Your Experience as Knowledge Preservers of African-American Culture is Very Critical to Minneapolis. As we talk about the challenges of the present, your vision for the future, and addressing a history of funding inequality for African-American arts and culture, as well as investments in historic preservation of African-American arts and culture in Minneapolis. We know that walls of art have been destroyed and artistic representation of historic places, people, and events often garner fleeting recognition. We are interested in your views of sites in Minneapolis and what that you believe are significant enough to the Black community to be protected. So our question to you tonight is, how can the Minneapolis African-American community identify works that are so seared into the consciousness of the Black community that there should be formal recognition for future generations and visitors? What should be saved and what should be protected? Ms. Coventry Cowens is the co-founder and museum manager of the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery. Ms. Cowens has worked as an assistant director of multicultural programs and services at the Twin Cities University. She also worked in the computer technology industry, academy, and social services. Ms. Cowens has volunteered with Camp Friendship and the International Leadership Institute and local African and African-American history projects. Memorialize the Movement is an ongoing initiative to collect and preserve the plywood protest art that was created in response to the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis on May 25th, 2020. Our goal is to create a safe and inclusive permanent space for people to reflect on the events that occurred during the summer of 2020 and ensure that we keep the civil rights movement going through this art. Its founder and executive director is Ms. Leesa Kelly. Ms. Kelly is a Chicago native and moved to Minnesota in 2017. When she's not collecting and preserving the plywood murals, she is writing for her blog, Leesa Lives, or facilitating self-care workshops that inspire and encourage BIWOC to center themselves in times of crisis. She believes in dismantling oppressive systems and rebuilding new systems that work for all people. Mrs. Seitu Jones is a multidisciplinary artist and community organizer known for his large-scale public artworks and environmental design. Working between the arts and public spheres, Leesa Jones channels the spirit of radical social movements into experiences that foster critical conversations and nurture more just and vibrant communities from the soil up. He's recognized as a dynamic collaborator and a creative force for civic engagement. My work is a testament of radical love for our beloved community, the local community, our ancestral community, and the community of innate humanity, he says about his work. So we have asked the panel members to comment on their experience, as well as answer the question, how can the Minneapolis African-American community identify works that are so seared into the consciousness of the Black community that there should be formal recognition for future generations and visitors? What should be saved? What should be protected? Each will have 20 minutes. Thank you. Ms. Coventry, if you'd start, please.
Well, thank you, Antonio, for inviting me to this presentation and panel discussion. Well, it's quite an undertaking that has been presented here, especially in terms of capturing the history of African Americans in Minneapolis, but around the state as well, and their movement and their accomplishments, and also how their culture has developed over the years, and along with the art that has been presented with that cultural development. As one of the co-founders of the African American Heritage Museum and Gallery, along with Tina Burnside, who is the other co-founder, we tried very hard to begin the process of working on the museum at a grassroots level. Too often times our type of institution is started at a higher level through private art collections or travel, and just ends up being a public space where everyone can come, but there's often a disconnect between the general population and those that started that particular museum or institution. So in looking at ways that we could preserve, archive, and exhibit different historical moments in the African American community in Minnesota, the grassroots level has been very beneficial to us because I think more people know us and the work that we're doing and are willing to help and support at that level. And we're working very hard to expand that information and level of excitement and commitment to other parts of the community. I know that part of the slides that I have kind of talk to the population that we cater to, which is everyone, frankly, it's everyone, and how we continue to have a vision that we hope to grow over the years as an institution and become more embedded in the way people basically look at art and include us as part of their education and history. So one part of that is that we selected an African symbol as West African symbol as part of our growth and determination with how we wanted to exhibit the museum. And that was one that displayed basically humility, because I think that is core to all African Americans, as well as strength. They've been able to carry on and survive and be resilient in spite of all the challenges. Our exhibits, our primary exhibit and history exhibit right now is from 1800 to 1950. That doesn't mean that we stay within those parameters all the time when exhibiting history and art, but we like to say that we can only do as much as we can, and with the staff that we have. So we work around those parameters. As I said, it's very grassroots, and the museum is open to all and is free. And we do have volunteers, and primary donors are at that grassroots level, along with some state and county. But we like to keep that, as I indicated, grassroots level going as we grow the museum and keep that input from the community. What's coming up for us in the museum right now, we have artists in residence. We have 4, which Seitu Jones has been a key part of that, as in helping us shape that and select the artists. We also have a history fellow we're supporting at this time, and we'll be showing all of this starting at the beginning of next year. And also we had a youth curator program. This is key, especially in the African-American community, to encourage youth to understand their history, but also how to exhibit it and to present it to the public and to understand how to talk about it. And that was 9 weeks this past summer. And 12 youth from the community had an opportunity to hear speakers and then demonstrate that they could present an exhibit at the end of the year or summer. So we're small, but we're very busy in terms of everything that we're trying to present, and also allow others to contribute to. And part of that in Minneapolis has allowed us also to be one of those destination points, which for Minneapolis, we get people that are going to see Paisley Park, but they also look for other African-American points of interest. And the museum has become one of those. We get a lot of people from out of state, outside the country, and they want to know, especially after last summer, what is Minneapolis like? What is Minnesota like? What are the people like? What do they have contributed? What is their history? So it's been quite fruitful in many ways to be a part of this project. Tina and I, we're in meetings constantly trying to craft the next exhibit or event, especially a soulful holidays event that we have with Meet Minneapolis downtown right now for the holidays. So some well-designed Christmas and holiday trees, but with a twist to it. So please do take time and come down and see the trees and talk to the artist, because she will be there too, Alicia Smiley. So I think I probably should wrap this up in terms of getting the message out about who we are and how we have developed. And we're located at 1256 Penn Avenue, North Minneapolis, on the 4th floor of the RAC building. This is a brand new building on the corner there, and we've been there for 3 years, and hope we can see more people there coming in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cowens. Ms. Leesa Kelly?
There was a question in the chat. Should we wait till the end, or should I just?
Yeah, I can say that questioning for you. How can Minneapolis African-American community identify works that are so seared into the consciousness of the Black community that there should be formal recognition for future generations and visitors? What should be saved? What should be preserved?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just start with a small background about Memorialize the Movement. It's a grassroots organization that I founded last summer during the uprising in Minneapolis after the murder of George Floyd, in reaction to the murder of George Floyd. As most of you probably know, during that time, there was a lot of plywood going up on businesses and storefronts who were trying to protect their windows and doors from being looted and broken into. And the community's response, the protesters, the rioters, artists, people's response to that plywood going up and everything that was happening around them was to create murals, to express the feelings that they had at the time, these complex emotions that spoke to their anger, their grief, their hope, their love, their mourning of George Floyd and everything that was happening at the time. And for me, I've always been a lover of museums. I've always been a lover of history, and I've traveled, extensively across the world. And I always start with the museums, the history museums, the cultural museums, the art museums. And so when I saw the murals going up, I was like, wow, this is incredible, because this is history being created right before my eyes. This is recorded artifacts. This is art. This is culture. This is everything that I love to see when I go to museums. And it's speaking so powerfully to these complex emotions that I have that I'm unable to express out loud. And so I'm going to protests, and I'm staying home crying, and I'm participating in mutual aid efforts. And then I see these murals that are just so powerful, speaking to these emotions that I have. And they gave me hope. They brought light into my world, and it was incredible to see everything from elaborate pieces done by, well-known, incredible artists like Mr. Seitu Jones, to pieces that were clearly done by toddlers and children, And so when those pieces of plywood, these murals now began to come down as businesses felt it was safe enough to open up their storefronts again, I wondered to myself, what would happen to them? And after waiting a couple weeks to see if anything would happen, and seeing murals begin to disappear, seeing rumors of murals being auctioned off or stolen, destroyed, left in an alley next to the garbage. Seeing interviews with institutions like MIA and the Walker, who were deliberating on whether or not they should collect and preserve the murals, I just kind of sprung into action and began going door to door, speaking to these businesses, and then ultimately collecting the murals. And that started in June of 2020. And since then, we have collected over 1,000 plywood panels, which is somewhere around 600 or 700 murals themselves. Murals can range anywhere from 1 panel to 14 panels, depending on how large the piece of art is. And we've been storing them in the Northrop King building, where we've been preserving them and archiving them with the help of the University of St. Thomas's Urban Art Mapping Department and the Midwest Art Conservation Center, and a huge network of volunteers. And we also activate them at exhibits. There was a picture somewhere in the slideshow, a couple of pictures of some of the exhibits we did this year. The first was our first annual Justice for George exhibit that we put on in partnership with the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery to commemorate the 1-year passing of George Floyd's murder. And then I think there's another photo of an exhibit that we did in collaboration with Miss Carrie Mae Weems in New York in August. And so when we talk about what should be collected, what should be preserved and remembered, for me, everything. And these murals are such a vibrant and just like in your face representation of that. You know, these murals are not just beautiful images, although there are several stunning pieces, really elaborate, vibrant murals. There's also just messages. There's just venting, people who literally just took to the boards to express their feelings so that they can go home and sleep that night. You know, so I don't believe that, you know, we have a right necessarily to pick and choose what gets preserved and what gets remembered and what is deemed art or artifact. I think we collect everything, we archive, we record everything, and then we sort through that and we help tell the story as it continues to evolve and as it turns from, you know, present circumstance into history. You know, I'm a part of a collective, MTM is a part of a collective called Collective Access, and it's an archiving software that we use to help number and archive the murals and collect data on the murals that we've collected and preserved over the last 18 months. And it's so interesting because there are a couple hundred other small local museums around Minnesota who are part of this collective. And they're all white institutions, and their art or artifacts range from everything to a museum somewhere in Chanhassen that just has hats from people who lived in that area between 1800 to 2005, or just household items like ironing boards and picture frames and candelabra. You know, they keep everything because it's important to their history, it's important to their culture, you know, it's how we.
You don't have the spaceship, so I would say no.
It's how we remember, you know, the people who have come before us. It's how we, you know, it's how we understand our way of life at the time. It's how we understand our culture at the time. And I think it's so powerful that they've done this and that we can't. I think it speaks volumes that we don't have artifacts necessarily that speak to what our life was like, what our fashion was like. Until I stepped foot in the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery, I didn't see pictures of people from the 18 and early 1900s, clothing items, hats, jewelry, glasses, and other small artifacts. And so I guess going back to the question, I think everything should be preserved. I think everything should be recorded. And I think as we think about the present, we really have to consider every little aspect of what we've seen and record it all. You know, everything from the offerings over at George Floyd Square. George Floyd Global Memorial archives every single rose that was left on the street. And I think that that is just so powerful because we've never been able to do that before. They record every single letter that was left for George Floyd, every piece of art, every offering, every candle, every pack of cigarettes that was left there. It's all being recorded in real time now. And 50 years from now, when somebody asks what happened in the Minneapolis uprising of 2020, they can literally go to a museum, hopefully we get to that point, but they can literally go to a museum and see packs of cigarettes and candles and letters from children to George Floyd that express exactly what was going on in that moment. And with Memorialize the Movement on that same front, you can go to a museum 50 years from now and see these elaborate murals and smaller, more raw, ugly pieces that speak to everyone's pain, everybody's trauma. You know, it's a story. And I think, you know, we're at this pivotal point in history where we get to reclaim what it means to preserve Black history. And we haven't really had that power before. You know, the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery is a perfect example of how hard we've had to fight just in Minnesota to have history represented for us, by us. And so I think, you know, putting our heads together, partnering with Black museums, emerging Black organizations, powerful artists like Seitu who have influence in the community, and saying we're gonna do this together, we're all gonna preserve, we're all gonna support each other. And you know, 50 years from now, we're gonna say we did that. We created something that our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren can look back on and reflect on, heal from, but be proud of too. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. Seitu Jones.
You know, first I have to give some shout outs, some love and respect to Judge Lang, Aaron, and Dr. Wilcoxon for pulling us all together to talk about what is actually sacred work. This is so deep and so powerful, and something, as Leesa so boldly put it, I mean, it has to be done. And we have to do it for ourselves. And also to give a big shout out to Leesa and Coventry. I mean, what you all have done is not just preserve this work, embrace the work, encourage the work, and push the work out there more, but you all have actually created institutions. And that is even more important, to create these institutions that truly reflect us and our work. Is Emery still there? I want him to go to some of these slides of mine, if he can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's start out with the first one.
And we're going to go really quick through most of these slides. I want, in fact, go real quick through that one. You go to the next one.
That's the best one.
No, it's not. I do a work that is ephemeral. I do work that is transitory, work that is permanent. The piece on the right is a portrait of Harriet Tubman pointing north, that for years sat outside the Tubman Women's Alliance to show our strength, the strength of Black women in particular. The piece on the left is a meal that I helped curate for the Indianapolis Museum of Art. Next one. The piece on the left is, I did a whole series of small paintings in the style of these Russian icon paintings. And this is a piece a small detail of a piece to Saint Medgar, to remember Medgar Evers. A piece on the right is one of 7 bronze shadows that are in the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden that were collaboration between Tecumseh Aiken, Soyini Guyton, a poet, and myself. To remember these folks and to be able to stand in the shadows of these folks who came before. Next one. Maybe we can go to the next one. Please, okay, here, you know, right now I'm speaking to you from the temporary office of my archive. I right now am cataloging, and it's one of the questions that you asked, Antonio, and that Leesa answered so well. I mean, what should we collect? And that's everything. You know, for good or for bad, I saved everything. People told me, oh, save your receipts. I saved my receipts. People said, oh, you should save your contracts. I saved my contracts. And so I saved all of these things and images and documenting that along the way with images, and ended up with all of this stuff that was pouring out of my studio, and many things. And there were these other things that were happening as I was saving and hoarding all this stuff. One was continually to lose my peers, artists who I had come of age with, artists who I collaborated with, artists who I deeply loved and respected and learned from, artists who mentored me, and watching those folks go, and then watching their memories slowly be erased. What can we do to preserve the memories of all those folks who came before? And so what I'm attempting to do here by working on creating my own archive is to create a template for other artists, African-American artists in particular, to be able to use to document their work, to determine how it should be organized, to look at planning your estate, thinking ahead, thinking about what will happen after I go, what will happen to my stuff, whether it's artwork or not. And we need to really, and so while I am really concerned about preserving objects, preserving large-scale artworks, I am more concerned with preserving the memories of these folks who came before. These folks who are my ancestors, both direct and indirect. How do we keep that going? And so what you're looking at here is an image of a building that was designed by Formula Architects, an African-American led firm here in St. Paul, Minnesota, that I am going to build with a studio on the ground floor and 3 spaces above it, 2 living spaces and a space that will house an archive and library that after I pass on will become a residency program, bringing artists from around the world to study and work in this particular studio in my neighborhood. This is a lot that my wife and I bought years ago that is literally down the street from where we live. And so we're plotting and planning now. And I hope to be around to work in that studio for a long time, but we're plotting and planning what will happen next. And all of us need to be concerned about how to pass on that work. Can you go to the next slide here? Oh, well, next slide. Please. Okay, this is where I want to end. During the uprisings that happened after the murder of George Floyd, I, like many other artists, like Leesa has documented, were wanted to convey our pain, our visions, our memories on this vast sea of plywood that existed along University Avenue in St. Paul and along Lake Street in Minneapolis. And I created, and I thought, what can I do as an artist? And so what I did was create this portrait of George Floyd and put the template on my website as a free download so that this thing could go out, this image of George Floyd could go out to the world to be able to document. Now, this is where I'm going to end. It's important for us to rethink. Now, we use terms like archive, archival, collecting, and with the institutions that Coventry and Leesa outlined, we need to rethink those terms. We need to think the way that African-American musicians did 120 years ago when they created jazz, that music using these Western instruments. Here we have these Western terms, these Western instruments. We have to think about a whole other way of preserving our memories. And we have to think about the institutions that will help us do that, along the way. And we have to think about the people that are coming behind us that will help build on what we've created so far. So this is where I want to end. This comes from my deep love of myself, of my family, of my community, and of the world. And this passion that drives all artists to want to leave the world a better place. So thank you all. Thanks, Emery, for putting up those slides for me.
Thank you very much to all three of you. We open now for questions and answers and a conversation. We have plenty of time, so thank you. If you have a question, if you'd like to unmute your microphone and pose your question, if you'd like to write it in the chat box, I'd be happy to read that for you. However you'd like.
Dr. Antonia, can I make a quick comment?
Of course.
Oh, so Dr. Antonia is going to conduct a quiz as she's done after each session. But I have noted that one of the highest response answers to how would you like African-American history, Black history preserved in Minneapolis is in museums and institutions like you all are creating and curating right now. So this is live and in action what people have desired according to the data Dr. Antonio has gotten so far from the surveys. So this is beautiful work, and I do wish to be able to visit it at your locations, and I will. I'll make that my business to do so. But I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate this work, and I know that the community does desire these places, these spaces for our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Emery, for pointing that out. And we will have that short survey a little bit later during this evening.
I think there are questions in the chat.
Oh, and well, I think Coventry did answer my question. She stated the location of her facility. It's on Penn Avenue, as I recall. Is that right?
Correct.
And so So I would like if you have your websites, we can post that up in the chat for record so that we can reference it and people can visit these locations and your information sites. Thank you, Leesa.
Coventry ID, the initials for the museum.org.
Could you say that again, Antonia?
The website for the museum, are they the initials MAAHMG?
.org.
Okay, I put it in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you. That's not one of my skills.
It's quite all right.
It's all good. We got Antonia to cover. Amen.
Thank you. There you are. Now you have both.
It's also okay if folks don't ask questions. One thing I want to say is, unfortunately, we don't have enough forums like this for us to come together, to share ideas, to share a meal. I mean, unfortunately, we can't do that in these times of COVID, but we need to do as much as we can to share these ideas back and forth. Once again, I can't emphasize enough how important, what Coventry showed, or what those slides showed, is that this is an unconventional museum. The Minnesota African American Heritage and Museum and Gallery is something that is nothing like any of the institutions around. Looking at the work that's collected, there's probably no other institution, no other formal museum in Minneapolis, although it has happened in St. Paul, a large museum, has exhibited Robin Hickman's work. I mean, and embrace that is valuable. The work that you're doing, Leesa, and I know that you've heard this, how hard it is to preserve plywood. And it is. But at the same time, that's what we worked on. So what do? Do we just toss it? I have actually been telling folks, keep that plywood, because unfortunately we may need it again, especially looking at the current times that we're in. So your museum might offer a whole other kind of service, the next reckoning that we have.
Yeah, plywood is not fun to collect or preserve, or reactivate. It's such a fickle medium, and because there was so much space to cover, there are so many different types of plywood, and they all react differently. So trying to figure out which ones are more fragile, which ones are sturdier and more willing to go out. And then there's different things on each one. There's paint, there's chalk, there's spray paint, there's pen, there's marker. It's definitely been a challenge to do, but I see a question in the chat to all of us. What are things you'd like?
Yeah, one last thing about what you're describing. Your work is not only sacred, but it's heroic. I can't tell you all how much a sheet of plywood weighs. And when you multiply that by 1,000 sheets, that is like the weight of 500 elephants or something. I don't know how we can equate it, but it is something that's out there.
Yeah, a sheet of plywood weighs roughly 50 pounds, and should take 2 people to lift because they're heavy. And my chiropractor will tell you that my back does not match my actual age.
Well, be careful.
We've come up with better methods to carry them and tools, and now we do not carry them one by one or one-on-one. We always carry them two at a time. And like I said, we have an extensive network of volunteers who are always willing to show up whenever we need extra hands. So I haven't had to lift in a while. I was gonna say I haven't had to lift in a while, but I literally just went and picked up boards this morning.
I'd
So
like to ask Dr. Cheryl Chapman to pose her question. She has it on her chat.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank each panelist and artist, entrepreneur, all of the titles that you all carry, leaders of the community. You're devoting so much time, commitment, passion, and all to what you do, which is so appreciated. I just wondered from each of you if you could just share, it doesn't have to be your wildest dream, it could just be a small wish or hope. What is it that you would like for the community to do to support the work that you're doing or the initiatives that you've started?
Wow, that could be a very long list when you're starting something new. But for the museum, which you know, as Leesa mentioned, and Seitu, you know, you want to collect as much as possible the good and the bad, because it all goes together. There's a story in all of it. And we hope to expand and grow. And we're looking at capital campaigns. We're looking at feasibility studies. We're taking those giant steps forward. And I have to say that all of this, you know, there have been opportunities in the past that were worked at and attempted with a museum. So we know it's not an easy road, and there are shoulders that we stand on when we take these leaps of faith when we go looking for opportunities to expand the museum. But I think, Cheryl, that expansion so we can have something permanent that everyone can call their own space. When you see a group of 25 high schoolers who are feeling not trustful in their high school somewhere in the suburbs, and they come to the museum and they say, this is home, this is our place, then you know you're on the right track. And you see them relax, you see them start talking with each other. And this is what we need to do. We need to make a place that we can call our own, to display our own narrative and artwork.
Can go next.
Thanks, that was insightful. Yes, thanks.
I think for Memorialize the Movement, we need, well, obviously for all of us, we need a ton of support. This is all grassroots, and we primarily run on volunteers. I was not paid to do this work until June of this year. So like a full year of volunteering doing this work, and then boom, someone saw me and was like, you can't go on like this. And I literally couldn't. So, I mean, first and foremost, we need funding. Currently, Memorialize the Movement has a space at the Northrop King building where we keep the boards and where we archive and preserve them. We do touch-ups, we bring the new ones in there. We have 2 spaces, one where we treat moldy and damaged boards, one where we keep the others and try and organize them. But our goal is to have a permanent space where people can come to the space and see the boards on display. Right now, they're kind of stacked up like a deck of cards. So you can't really come and see them. You can interact with them as you're picking them up and helping us to move them around and organize them. But we would love to create a permanent space here in Minneapolis where people can sit with them. And
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
yeah, absorb the spirit of that and learn from them. You know, there's so much information in these murals, so much about the people who created them, the community, we talk about a lot about the socioeconomic status in Minneapolis based on where the murals came from. And that's something we want to teach people and help them learn about. So funding definitely, so that we can get our permanent space and so that we can continue to activate the boards out in the community, but also in a space that we can call our own. Volunteers, we have an extensive network, but as it gets cold, people start to dwindle down. And also too, as things have settled down in Minneapolis, people have started to fizzle out and they have less of a drive to participate. But most importantly for us and for me personally, as the leader of this organization, as the person who started this and is constantly showing up and doing this work, is that I need to be surrounded by more Black people. You know, when I first started this work, somewhere around December, I reached out on social media and was just like, am I doing the right thing? Because I don't see you guys coming to the organizing days. I don't see you showing up at the events. Most of the people interacting are not Black people. Is this what you want me to do? Am I doing the right thing? And the response was an overwhelming outpouring of love and support from the Black community in Minneapolis and in the larger Midwest, because I'm from Chicago, but I went to college in Michigan. And that has been wonderful, but I'm always encouraging Black and Brown people to get involved, to come out to events, to volunteer. We're looking for Black and BIPOC board members who want to sit on the board and be stakeholders for Memorialize the Movement. We're actually hiring 3 interns for the spring semester. They need to be university students, but they can be from any university in the Twin Cities metro area, and they're going to be paid $18 an hour for a semester's worth of internship work. And we're also hiring grant writers, we're hiring a development coordinator, and frankly, I'm only willing to hire Black people because this is an institution that is built by Black people, and I want it to reflect us. I want people who understand what we're going through and how hard this work is, but how urgent and necessary this work is. So for me, that's the biggest ask from the community, is to get more Black and Brown people involved in the work.
Thank you, Leesa. There are a couple of questions in the chat box, and I don't know if you want to answer them now or should we wait for Seitu to take his turn as well?
Real briefly, like Coventry, like Leesa, you saw that you saw the illustration of the building that we're envisioning. You know, I'm about to launch a capital campaign as well to build that. So funding, I do need that. But, you know, also to riff on what Leesa was saying, I really want Black folks, young Black men in particular, to really show each other, show all of us this deep love and respect that we have for ourselves, and elevate that to this love and respect for our families and the world as well. It pains me not only to see young Black men die and Black women to die at the hands of the police, but to die at each other's hands. And we really have to work on ways to share and spread that love.
Dr. Antonia, can I ask a question of the panelists, please?
Yes, if we could please hang on to your questions so that there are two people who have posted the questions on
Oh,
the
yep,
chat box,
absolutely.
and then Mr. Joseph Waters, would you like to go next? And then Ms. Emily Rutherford.
Good evening. This is directed for Leesa Kelly. I thought I saw some of your works on minnesotadigital.org. Is it still there? Because I think that's part of collective access, because I just tried to look it up and I can't find it.
It shouldn't be.
Oh, okay.
We have been using collective access to archive, and we've used it as like a database, but we haven't published any of the works yet. So if they're on there, it may have been by accident because we're still learning how collective access works and kind of working with that. But our goal is that by the end of, well, hopefully before that, but long term, by the end of next year, we'll have everything photographed with high definition images and 3D scans. And then we'll also have all information cataloged and documented so that we can have a digital archive that people can access. And we probably will end up partnering with Collective Access on, I forgot what their front facing website is. It could be MN Digital, and having all of that available and free online for people.
Okay, because that's what I thought. That's what I thought I saw. So I was looking for something else. Great, thanks.
It's possible.
Sure. There's one other question, if I could ask to Seitu Jones. The firm you're working with in St. Paul, do they have any pictures or any more drawings of your prospective location?
Yeah, they have produced a set of plans that we are now pricing out right now.
Okay.
And I put my website address in the chat. And so keep looking at my website, and hopefully around the beginning of the year, you're going to see more images.
Super. I think it's a great idea. Good luck.
No, thank you.
And if you want to do any fundraising, definitely like to see something on your website where we can contribute.
Oh, yeah, and you'll see that too.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Rutherford.
Hi. Sorry for interrupting you earlier, Lisa. I didn't realize that my mic was unmuted. But so I also work for 106 Group along with Erin, but I'm not part of her team technically. I'm part of the archaeology team. But your preservation methods about the plywood got me thinking about that, and not just the plywood, but also other forms of media. Since you guys are all artists, I was curious if you guys have any input as to like how like do people normally contact, like how does one contact you in terms of acquiring historical artifacts and artwork like paintings and clothing and so forth for the museum? Like do they reach out to you, or is it something that you reach out to the community, or both? And then also, like, you know, looking farther down the road, maybe this is just my brain getting eager, but if, you know, there were to ever be excavations done on significant places, or, you know, something of that nature, would the museum, you know, want to, you know, house, like be a source of a place where these artifacts could go to afterwards if they specifically relate to art?
Okay. Wow. Right now we have 1,100 square feet, and we don't have proper storage at this time. We have accepted a few items because sometimes people are downsizing and they say they don't really know what to do with it, a piece that they find that we might find intriguing and we'll take, but we have to be very careful with what we get and how we can store it. And right now, we're limited in our storage area. So we're willing to look at pieces and make that determination if we can take it or we can squeeze it someplace and box it up and make notations, which we normally do. But we really are limited in our space. And part of our vision is to have a museum that has its own storage on site, that we don't have to drive across town to get things out of storage. So if you have something or you think would be of value,
Oh yeah, no,
worth
I
our time to
wasn't
look at.
asking personally. I just was curious, but that is a very good point regarding the storage. I was just curious if you had those situations at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Coventry.
Go ahead, Leesa.
Yeah, for our part, it was a mix. I first started going door to door with flyers, reaching out to businesses, calling, walking in and talking to people. I put flyers on every surface of Minneapolis and St. Paul until people started calling me back. And that worked. People were more than happy to, allow us to collect and preserve their plywood because they had no room for it and they didn't know what to do with it. And they didn't want to do the wrong thing too. So they were happy to say, yes, you can do that. But over time, as the media actually really helped us get the word out, especially Black and brown journalists and reporters, they found us, they interviewed us, they gave us primetime spots on TV and radio so that we can get our story out there and talk about what we were doing. And by January of this year, people were calling us. And so now we receive emails or phone calls. We have an information section on our website where people can send us a message if they have murals or artifacts or art to donate. And then we schedule times to either have them drop it off or pick it up. And for a moment there, towards the end of fall, or towards the beginning of fall, actually, the space at the Northrop King building was completely packed, and we didn't know what to do or how to continue collecting. And so I started talking to some volunteers who were also architects and some builders and creative people, and we actually designed stalls of sorts and built them in the space so that we can store the boards more space efficient, and make room for more murals and more artifacts. So we are still taking things now because we have a lot more room, which is wonderful. But we also have taken some random works of art and artifacts. Some people have emailed us about donating protest signs that they had, or one artist who was completely anonymous donated an incredible work of art on a broken fence. And we can't move it because it is a broken fence, but it is one of the most incredible pieces that I've seen come out of this uprising. And he insisted on remaining anonymous, but he said, take this and make sure that it stays a part of the story. And so we've also collected a couple of random pieces of art on fence or canvas or paper as they've come in. And we will continue to do so, but I also, a lot of times, if it's more of an offering, or if it was directly from a protest, I might tell people to contact the George Floyd Global Memorial over at GFS, since they are taking in smaller pieces and have the room for that, since they're using the, gosh, I can't remember of the center on the corner of the square, but.
Pillsbury House.
Yes, the Pillsbury House, thank you. for storage.
And
Well, that's
I would
great.
encourage you to visit Pillsbury House, where you can see not only this collection of work, but you can see the preservation process that folks are using. You know, we now, and really that is, when I talk about this being sacred work, a lot of that work is being led by Sister Janelle Austin, who is a theologian by training. And so this is part of her mission to do this, but she now has been consulting other folks around the country on how to preserve this work that is sometimes real temporal and temporary and
Is meant to be
ephemeral.
temporary initially.
Well, yeah, I mean, people, you know, even like me, I'm
Expect
really,
everything.
yeah,
At
I
least
don't really
in the
think
moment.
about like archival processes
Mhm.
in
In daily
when I
life.
work. You know,
Yeah.
when I paint on plywood, when I was up and down the avenue, that was not on my mind, you know, having this thing being saved. But now here are groups of folks who are saving this. In addition, you know, I was on a call, part of a Zoom gathering of other artists and cultural institutions, other Black artists and cultural institutions around the country that are formally archiving work. So this is something that is sparking in Black communities all over. In addition to that, there are enough Black folks now that work for the Smithsonian in positions of responsibility, who are curators and producers and archivists and, you know, all kind of folks that that now are pushing the Smithsonian to collect in a way that they've never had to think before. I mean, how do you collect this information that was created as part of this uprising that happened, it started in 2020 and really still goes on in some way? You know, so the world is changing, and hopefully with us as this at the center of this change, then our lives will be preserved, and as I started out a long time ago, and not erased.
Yes, I agree totally. Thank you so much for you answering my questions, you guys.
I think Amory had a question.
Oh, yes, and I am really enjoying this. Thank you for answering these questions. If I may indulge, let me start with Seitu, since you were just speaking. And by the way, thanks for putting up the links to your websites. And I'm struck by this quote that you put up on your website. Is that showing up?
Yeah, it's there.
Yes, it
It's right
is.
there.
Okay.
Along
I
with
have
my
my
favorite
slide.
portrait.
Yeah, so my question is, one, can I ask you a favor by reading that quote, and then could you explain your interpretation of that portrait that we're looking at? It is very striking, and if you could just read that quote and then explain what your communication intent is through the message you're sending through this portrait.
Okay, I'm just going to read those bottom two lines because those are my direct quotes there, direct words. My work is a testament of radical love for our beloved community, the local community, our ancestral community, and the community of innate humanity. And so really what that is, you know, I was so fortunate and so blessed. I mean, I am right here on the corner of Victoria and Selby in St. Paul. My grandparents came to Old Rondo just a few blocks away from here. Actually, this is part of the Old Rondo community over 100 years ago. And I was fortunate to grow up in this family that demonstrated it. And at the beginning, before we came on, I was describing my crazy family, and I have this crazy beloved family. I had these aunties and uncles who taught me watching them taught me how to love myself, how to love my family, and really how to love my community. And as a part of all that, they also, because they love the outdoors, my father and uncles were these mad Minnesota fishermen. And so they had us on lakes all the time. And that taught me how to love the world. And you know, these are terms that we don't use enough in conversations, even in conversations about preserving history. But we all operate from this deep sense and well of love. And I mean, I could talk more about that, but that's essentially what that means.
All right. Thanks. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I could see that you have you're definitely an artist. There's a lot of artwork and just it's a very straightforward page, not too busy. So I do appreciate that, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the critique, man. I need that as well too. Next time we redo that, I'm gonna send it to you to have you review it again, man. No joke.
No,
I mean, really.
no problem. No
You know,
problem.
yeah, no, we all need that kind of critical analysis to grow.
Yep. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to comment. And then I'd like to comment on, are you seeing this your website? Let me make sure it's pulled up. Leesa, I'm struck by this photo. There's a black arm and a white arm, and they're touching fingers, but there's blood streaking all over both arms. And I'm certain this has something to do with George Floyd. But if you have some more insight on the artist and what drove them to draw this image.
Yeah, this is an incredible piece. This is a one panel piece that was done by a young local Black artist named Darlington Panton. And I can put his contact information in the chat in just a minute. This piece was collected in Uptown on Hennepin Avenue at the Urban Outfitters in the little Hennepin Mall next to Calhoun Square. And it always strikes people. It always strikes me when I first saw it, I was just like, wow, because we're all familiar with the image that Michelangelo made of God and
Adam
touching fingers. And there's this huge similarity there to Darlington's work in that painting. And I think it's supposed to symbolize the complicated relationship that Black and white people have in America, and how we can come together and it can be beautiful, and yet we can also create this really destructive pattern. And I actually I've spoken to Darlington, I've met Darlington, but I don't know if I've actually ever asked him what his interpretation of it was. But I'm always kind of struck by what people create and how the murals come across to visitors and volunteers and even myself, because I'm always understanding that this is an expression of what someone was feeling at the time. And so I think for me, like understanding the complicated history in Minnesota, especially with race and racism, I think it's kind of speaking to the fact that, you know, we have a lot of work to do still. There's still a lot of destruction, there's still a lot of racism, there's still a lot of hate, and obviously so much bloodshed. And maybe we want to get to this point where we can come together and build new life, build something beautiful, something positive, build real community that's not rooted in our oppression.
Amen. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then finally, I'd like to thank you for putting the website up in the chat for the Minnesota African American History Museum. I did notice that we can scroll down and there is a donate section on there. So I just tried it out with a small donation. It works. The money's gone out of my checking account. So thank you for that opportunity to help out a little bit. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Antonia. Thank you for your graciousness, your panelist. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments?
I did have one more question, actually, and this is less for the panelists than for the organizers of the panel. So this is the last Zoom community engagement meeting.
Yes.
As COVID moves forward, and also, you know, for the eventual fact that it will eventually be solved. What are some of the ideas going forward? Like, will there be more engagement in like in-person events in the future to try and add on to this sort of conversation, or is this, you know, the pinnacle of at least the Zoom or the informative panel speaker type discussions?
I'm going to ask Judge LaJune Lang because her organization is the lead on this project.
Thank you for your question. We will be continuing to reach out to stakeholders. We will have some other less formal engagements. We'll be having some one-on-one interviews. We have television pieces. One was on Fox News last night, and we will continue. The city has put a website up where people can make comments, make suggestions on sites to preserve or people to recognize. So the effort is ongoing, and we really appreciate that your interest continues because we are just getting warmed up.
Oh, good, because I'm just getting warmed up too.
All right.
I can't wait to follow this into the future.
Thanks for the enthusiasm, Emily. I share your enthusiasm. I've had lots of wow moments during this conversation, and it is, if I may say, it is a blessing that we can come together and meet over Zoom and convey and exchange ideas and learn. And we're taking
Great.
steps forward, and I think we're making great progress with this forum that Judge LaJune and her organization has put together for this. Thank you.
Yes, I wish I had known about it sooner. I only came in on the 4th meeting.
Well, maybe you can talk Judge LaJune into letting you see some of the video.
You know, one of the things that we really haven't touched on a great deal here in this conversation are these places that are of historic importance to Black folks here in Minneapolis and really in Minnesota. You know, there has been this Black presence in Minnesota since long before statehood. And there aren't enough markers to share that experience or to let folks know that experience. There are some folks, and I'm fortunate to have this personal tie all the way back to my great-grandfather who came to Minnesota in the 1870s sometime and settled in Red Wing. Now that's just one story. There are so many other stories that need to be told. There were Black churches in towns in other parts of Minnesota. There were Black churches in Minneapolis and St. Paul that no longer exist, these institutions. You know, homes that folks fought over. There have been just a handful of designations. So it's nice to see the Tilson-built homes being recognized in South Minneapolis, part of my old homeland, where I grew up. You know, we kind of, at least my generation, kind of just took that for granted. And now we need to recognize those steps that all these folks took before us. How can they be marked? How can we let other folks know, and in particular, other folks in our own community know about that history? How can we embrace that? And so this is a shout out for the 106 group. You know, I'm going to put you all out there as knowing that process and sharing that process so that we can follow that process, you know, outside of that, and even do like I was describing before, change it up, you know, create something new and a new way to even recognize these spaces and places.
I think one of the things that we found in terms of looking at spaces is the importance of Sabathani Community Center. And I went through there one year and started looking at all the art. And I'm like, Seitu is here at Sabathani. I wonder how long this artwork has been at Sabathani.
Fortunately, I'm old enough to have like touched and have those institutions touch me in different ways. Yeah, so, you know, we've all been a part of building those institutions.
And you curated, Seitu, you curated a dinner on the 38th Street Bridge.
Well, actually, no, I didn't do that. There was, you know, that I have to give a big shout out to the Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council, Andrea Jenkins, who did that. You know, like, this is an idea and something that I've done now all over the country, but this is an idea that I hope to share, and folks are taking up on it. In addition, you know, it's not like I created dinner. You know, it's an idea I stole over and over and over again. But, you know, I have just been fortunate to be around long enough to have witnessed this period of time, you know, from the Black arts movement to now, and to be a participating member in these cultural upheavals and cultural meanderings and these cultural blessings, and hope to continue. No, thank you. Now, you know, I'm going to shout out, I'm going to throw something out to you as well, too. And one of the things I asked you about, and being a part of this panel, and I'm not sure if you've mentioned it before, but your work, along with the work with Tina Burnside from the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery, to recognize this early Black led fire station in South Minneapolis on Hiawatha. You know, people pass that, thousands of people pass that in a day, and no one knows its history, you know, why it was created, and you wanting to recognize that, to preserve that space is really important.
Seitu, I don't know if you know how big of a smile you put on my face talking about the other sites in Minnesota that haven't been looked at closely yet, and your call out to 106 group. The whole reason I joined 106 group in the first place was to be able to basically work on exactly that. I got my bachelor's out in Pennsylvania and studied this old, forgotten about Civil War cemetery for Black veterans and this whole community that was around the cemetery. And I knew that in Minnesota, it had never been talked about, but I knew that there were places that existed and that I wanted to help bring these places to light with the help of site descendants like yourself and the other members of the Black community in Minnesota. So I'm taking that call to heart personally. I know I can't speak for Aaron, but I definitely accept that call personally, at least. And I'm excited to see what the future holds in terms of recognizing these places and relearning a lot of the history that's been forgotten. So thank you for that.
Well, and I'm putting 106 out there. I've done a lot of work with 106 group as well. And so, I'm putting this challenge out to the leadership, in particular, your boss, Ann, on ensuring that the 106 group looks more and more like the rest of the community that it works in, and that you have this commitment to training and working with other folks to pass on those skills and knowledge.
It sounds great. My cubicle is only like 20 feet away from her office, so I'll talk to her.
Tell her. Yeah, tell her. Seitu said.
Thanks, everyone. I'd like to call attention that Aaron has posted a website about this study, the African American Historic Cultural Context. There is a link there on the chat box. And there is also a link if you'd like to offer additional feedback and suggestions of sites or statues or places, also on the chat box. And Leesa, you have placed a couple of links there. Would you like to talk about those, what they are?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Antonia. These are the links to the artist Darlington Panton, who had the mural that we saw just a little bit ago of the two fingers touching. It's their website. And oh, there you go. Their website and also their Instagram. And as you can see, a lot of Darlington's work is inspired by Dali and other surrealist artists, which is really cool. Go to their website, you'll see a lot of imagery of kind of classic paintings that have been re-inspired and re-envisioned with Black subjects, and he's just really cool. He's super cool.
That's fantastic.
Thank you for that. Should we go to the survey, Emery, or?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. As Emery mentioned a few minutes ago, we have a short survey, just 3 questions, just so that we get your feedback and we are collecting the responses. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see the rest of question number 3 that you can see when you open the survey. So the first one asking about whether it's important or not. How should we preserve? And then the third question, what would you like the next generation formally recognize? And once you hit submit, all of the responses are going to be combined. And we're going to see in a few minutes the results.
All showing up for me. But I think you know where I stand on most of the questions.
You're not able to access the survey?
No, we're not seeing it yet.
Okay.
I was able to get it.
Okay.
I just completed mine, so.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Emery, are
completed
you
mine
able-
too. Yeah, I completed mine.
Yeah, we have 7 responses so far. 8 responses so far.
We are 18.
I think it might be because of hosting privileges, which might be why you can't see it.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, that's right. The hosts can't participate in polls. That's the way Zoom has it set up. I can see it, but I can't respond to it, or none of us who are hosting can respond to the poll.
Thank you.
Yep. So we're gonna end it with
there you are. So 100% that it is important to document, honor, and preserve African American arts and culture. And then 100% through recordings, and 88% both statues and museum in Minneapolis. 200% exhibits, statues, or monuments, tours of historic homes, and African American registry came second, 75%, and lastly, tours of historic homes at 63%.
Could you qualify what you mean by the African American registry? Like, what would that entail?
It's a nonprofit organization that does an online archiving. They have interviews, they have, they try to create a parallel curriculum of African American presence, both here in Minnesota, but also nationwide. It's about the history and social studies. And it's based here in the state of Minnesota, Minneapolis, actually, more simple.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
What is the name of the organization?
African American Registry.
Okay. Thank you for qualifying.
Judge, I don't know if you'd like or if we have additional comments.
Antonia, I thought I might chime in after Seitu's kind words as well as challenges. And I wanted to make sure that everyone knows also that the virtual engagement sessions are ending, but we'll be compiling summaries of the event and information gathered in a report that will be completed in the spring of next year. And I think one thing that we're particularly excited about is the list of places that we've been generating, largely thanks to Judge Lang's own brain and extensive knowledge of the history of Minneapolis, as well as through conversations with panelists and suggestions from community members. So we're really excited for that list and that map that we'll be able to share through this project that will lay out a long list of where we can go next and what we can start designating and researching further. And we're also trying to think outside the box of what is traditionally considered a historic site through this process.
Thanks, Sarah.
And also to answer Seitu, the International Leadership Institute has been working extensively on the all-black fire station at 4501 Hiawatha Avenue. Our work continues. We're working with the Black firefighters. We're working with community. We're working with the city to take that whole fire station and the information about the lives of the firefighters to the next level. So you'll hear more about that from the International Leadership Institute. And the International Leadership Institute and the Lang Johnson Development are committed to continue to work with the 106 group on other sites, other activities in the community, other preservation efforts, because this is only the beginning in terms of daylighting our history. People who've been waiting in the shadows for us to say their name for over 100 years, we're getting the chance. St. James AME Church is so happy that they're not forgotten. They were founded in 1860 and they have become almost invisible. And now they see themselves on the news and they have renewed hope that their own community hasn't given up. So we're just beginning in terms of what we're doing with the study and what we're doing to inspire the community to take on the task.
Right on.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait.
Really incredible work.
Well, we have a special guest. I think Andrea Burke is in the audience. Did you want to say a few words, Andrea?
Yeah, I can. Thank you guys for all of your participation. Sorry, I've been out on maternity leave and I am, I've got the baby with me right now, which is why I don't have my camera on at the moment. But thank you guys again for holding all of these. This has been interesting to listen to, and I really look forward to the report that comes out of this. But this has been good. This has been very, very interesting to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you as a new mom for joining us. We know how exhausting that responsibility is, and we really appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you.
I think, Antonia, if there are no further questions, we can close out the evening.
I think we can. Is there any further question? Any comments?
No, I agree. Let's, working with Keith Ellison before he became part of the legislature and then congressman, and when he was doing community work, and now Attorney General, when he was doing community work, he would cut off meetings at different points because he would say, the best way to kill a movement is to meet too long. And we need to remember that. So yeah, let's end it now. Out of love.
The judge will have the last word. Thanks, everyone.
I want to just give a shout out to Tracy Gibson, who's the pastor of St. James AME Church and is in the audience. And thank you for your steadfastness, and good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Dr.
Thanks
Antonia,
again for everything.
I just have a quick question for you, Dr. Antonia.
Yes.
Your accent, where is it from?
I come from Brazil.
Bom dia.
That's Seitu.
Bom dia. From and folks.
You're on mute, Seitu.
Folks there let you know that they are also African Americans.
Of course we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. So.
I love it.
So my love to all of you all. Thank you, Dr. Wilcoxon.
Thank you so very much. Pleasure to see you again.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Antonia, Aaron, Judge Lang, Emery. This was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoy speaking and having
Thank you
this.
so much for your presence, Leesa. What
Thank
impressive
you.
work you're doing.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Coventry.
Thank you all.
Happy
Appreciate
Thanksgiving.
you all.
Bye,
Yes.
Cheryl.
Thank you, Coventry.
Oh, did Seitu
See
leave?
you, Antonio.
I think so.
Oh, okay, I'll just email him. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night.
Antonio, this is Coventry.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see me, but
You do have one.
yes.
Is that, Lorisha? I think that's the image of the highest deity in the African pantheon.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been hanging here a long time, so finally I get to. Actually, it was my mother that brought it back. on her
Oh,
travels.
yeah, I have
But,
been talking with Georgina. I don't know if that's sweet.